Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the joint meeting of the West Turlock Subbasin Groundwater Sustainability Agency Technical Advisory Committee and the East Turlock Subbasin Groundwater Sustainability Technical Advisory Committee. This is July 9th meeting, calling this meeting to order at 2:05 p.m. I actually have a quorum of the West Turlock GSA, so I'll call us to order right now. Sarah?
We also have a quorum, so I can call us to order.
Wonderful. First item on the agenda is public participation. This is the time set aside for members of the public to directly address the joint TAG on any item of interest to the public that is within the subject matter jurisdiction of the TAG. You can speak on any item now, or if you can hold your comments to when the item appears on the agenda. So with that, any public participation? Okay, hearing none, and it appears there's none online. We'll move to item number 4, the meeting minutes. This is the meeting of the June 11th, 2024 regular joint meeting of the West Turlock and East Turlock Technical Advisory Committee. Those minutes were sent around earlier in the week. And I'd ask the West Turlock for a motion to approve or amend. What's your pleasure?
Move to approve.
A motion by Curtis. Do we have a second? A second by Richard. Any further comments? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, minutes stand approved. Minute, Sarah?
Okay, we have the same minutes to approve from our joint tech meeting. Can I get a motion to approve?
I move.
Dennis, thank you. Second?
Second.
Thank you, Ashley. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Okay, moving on to budget update, overview of revenues and expenditures, West Turlock, East Turlock, and the joint account. Michael.
Okay. For the West Turlock, ending balance, we're still making a few adjustments, but ending balance for June 30th was $1,165,299.43. For the basin, the total, the ending balance for June 30th was $776,086.49.
And then, as you guys know, for the West Turlock, this Thursday at our board meeting, they'll be adopting the budget for the current fiscal year. Thanks for that. Sarah, over to you.
Yes, so the East Turlock GSA has an account balance of $411,781. We have more than $411. That's it. Thank you.
Questions on any of the budgets? Okay, hearing none, moving on to item number 6, our main event. This is the GSP revisions that are going to both our boards this Thursday. So a presentation by Todd Groundwater and Woodard Curran on the status of the GSP revisions, well impact analysis, project management actions, and the schedule. So over to you, Liz and Dominic.
Thanks so much. And thank you guys for having us. I'm going to share my screen so you can see my presentation. Okay, can you see it?
Yep, looks good to us, Liz.
Great. Well, thanks so much for joining. So today we are going to give you an overview of the revisions that were made to the GSP. This is not new information. You've seen it all before, but the revised GSP is due to DWR by next Tuesday. Hopefully we'll get it uploaded this week. It's basically done, and we just wanted to kind of summarize it for you and let you know what the major changes are. So as you have heard before, DWR's letter, that determination letter that we received in January, had 2 deficiencies. The first deficiency was that the GSP does not provide sufficient information to support the selection of chronic lowering of groundwater levels sustainable management criteria. And what they meant by this was that we defined interim milestones in the GSP for wells within East Turlock Subbasin GSA and a handful of wells in the Western Principal Aquifers. And so what DWR wanted to see was an analysis of the effect on beneficial uses and users of groundwater if groundwater levels reached that interim milestone, which were set for 2027. So in response to that, they had several different corrective actions for this first deficiency. The first one was basically asking for a well impacts analysis. So that's exactly what we did. We conducted a well impacts analysis using all records of water supply wells with construction information that we could get our hands on. The main source of this data was DWR's online system for well completion reports, the OSCAR database. We also had well information from when we developed the GSP originally, and from the model, and also from GSP updates and model updates since the GSP was submitted a few years ago. In total, this analysis was based on almost 8,000 records of water supply wells. Each of these records had, these wells had well construction information. So the analysis was limited to records where we had well construction information. And what we did was we compared the minimum threshold and the IM elevations at the representative monitoring wells to the total depths of water supply wells, both at the minimum threshold level and the interim milestone level. And the results of this analysis showed that approximately 85 wells are at risk of being dry at the 2027 IM. And then the next corrective action from DWR for this deficiency was, okay, now that you've analyzed the well impacts, what are you going to do to mitigate it? Are you going to develop a well mitigation plan? And the answer is yes. The revised GSP includes a well mitigation program to be implemented by January 31st, 2025. The revised GSP has a draft memorandum of understanding that the GSAs have worked on for this well mitigation program. This will be included as an appendix in the revised GSP. And the resolution, which will be adopted this week by both GSAs, commits to developing this well mitigation program by January 31st, 2025. So we are showing DWR what they want to see, which is a commitment and a timeline for developing this. And we've given them a draft outline in the form of the MOU of the information that it's going to have in it. In general, the program is going to mitigate water supply wells that experience adverse impacts due to declining groundwater levels that have occurred after the date of GSP adoption, which is January 6, 2022. So the third corrective action for this deficiency, DWR wanted to know whether lowering groundwater levels to the 2027 IMs would have an effect on other sustainability indicators. And so we looked at 3 different sustainability indicators. The first one was land subsidence. So we looked at the potential impact of the 2027 IM on the land subsidence sustainability indicator. We focused on the representative monitoring wells with the 2027 IMs, which again are in the Eastern Principal Aquifer and a handful in the West. And the real focus was these RMWs within the Corcoran Clay extent and close to the boundary of the Corcoran Clay, because we know that the Corcoran Clay, the area within the Corcoran Clay, is most vulnerable to future subsidence. And what we found was that lowering groundwater elevations to the 2027 IMs will not result in groundwater elevations declining to below the top of the Corcoran Clay, and therefore impacts on land subsidence are unlikely. We also looked at degradation of water quality. So we analyzed the 2027 IMs on degradation of water quality. We focused on water quality data from gamma wells with known well construction, and we compared hydrographs at the representative monitoring wells to water quality at the nearest gamma wells for the 6 constituents of concern, which were identified in the GSP. And this is the best available data that we have. We compared hundreds of chemical concentration charts to hydrographs throughout the subbasin. And we, in reviewing this, saw no clear relationships between groundwater levels and concentrations of any of these 6 COCs. And so the absence of this relationship suggests that lowering groundwater levels should not affect the degradation of water quality sustainability indicator. We also looked at interconnected surface water. We analyzed the 2027 IMs on this sustainability indicator, And the focus here was the representative monitoring wells within the interconnected surface water monitoring network that have 2027 IMs below the MTs. And we have RMWs with these 2027 IMs below the MTs along the Tuolumne and Merced rivers. And so what we did was we compared the MT and the IM elevations at these representative monitoring wells to the nearest stream node invert elevation, which we got from the model. The model has stream node invert elevations about every half mile through the length of the river. And so we assessed the respective distance from the RMW to the stream node, the depth of the RMW, and also the gradient change from the MT to the IM. What we found were that the changes in elevation from the MT to the 2027 IM are small, on the order of 5 to 10 feet at the representative monitoring wells that are closest to the rivers. And it's uncertain if lowering groundwater levels to these 2027 IMs along these two rivers will cause an undesirable result, which in the GSP is defined as disconnection. Groundwater conditions along the river boundaries are identified as a data gap in the GSP, and that's why this is uncertain. And we know that DWR is working on guidance documents that they're going to be publishing in the future. And we will incorporate their future guidance documents in the future to try to help us fill this data gap and help answer this question. But at this point, for the sustainability indicator, the answer is it's uncertain. So moving on to deficiency number 2, and I'll pass it over to Dominic.
Thank you, Liz. Good afternoon, everyone. So as Liz mentioned a little bit ago, we have 2 main deficiencies to address, and the second of those 2 deficiencies is to basically ensure that the GSP and our planning efforts to achieve sustainability needed to provide additional details related to our projects and management actions, particularly that the basin needs to show a feasible path forward to achieve sustainability and effectively how we intend on achieving that. So that's really was done one of 2 ways, similar to the previous. This deficiency had 2 main corrective actions. One being really focused on the base, showing a commitment from the basin to achieve sustainability, a timeline for implementation. And so we certainly went through that. I'll get to that in a moment. And then in addition to that, DWR also asked us for additional information, detail analysis done to show that the project's management actions that we have queued up in the near horizon are going to be enough to achieve sustainability under a variety of conditions. Next slide, please. Okay, so then diving into that, getting first to that level of commitment. So as everyone's seeing here, and we talked about a moment ago, the goal by the end of this week is to have an adopted GSP and an approved resolutions from each of the GSA member agencies to submit to DWR at the latest mid next week. And so, but then immediately afterward, it's kind of get right back to the grindstone and to really just show that we are going to continue to work heavily on achieving our sustainability goals. And so as one of the major components to that is to be able to show in DWR that we are continuing to move forward and that our demand reduction management actions will be implemented by January 31st, 2025, which is approximately 6 months after the submission of the revised GSP. And then a year after that, those management actions will be at least partially implemented no later in the beginning of 2026. And so as I said earlier, really the major goal that's going to come out that we're hoping to convey to DWR with this revised GSE is really that commitment, the commitment to implementing management actions and a commitment to achieving sustainability. The goal of which is to show the state that not only do we intend on arresting overdraft and so that we basically hit that inflection point relating to groundwater levels and we halt overdraft, and that really we are in the path to recovery, the path towards our MTs and MOs. Okay, so the path, a little bit kind of background information on the path of how we got here today and how we are revising the GSP to kind of communicate tell us a little bit of the story here is step 1 was to dive much deeper into our water budgets. And so as part of our GSP, we provide a water budget analysis, looking at historical conditions, projected conditions. We looked at a variety of operations, climate change, look at sustainability conditions, and we presented that to DWR. Now, in order to kind of both hold ourselves accountable as well as being able to give DWR some of the tools to be able to hold us accountable, we really wanted to take a deeper dive into that analysis, provide additional level of detail and information to the state, really to show them that we are able to manage this basin under a variety of operational and hydrologic conditions, right? That effectively we're creating this backstop that guarantees sustainability. That is our goal with this GSP. And so that we need to make sure that we have the tools to outline, in the event of, sequential, very dry, critically wet years, then that we are still poised, that we have planned and we anticipate those conditions, and that so we will guarantee our sustainability regardless. And so what we did is we utilized that detailed water budget information in the support and the development of those management actions, the triggers. Effectively, we took all the information that we could and built them into the program to be able to assure our long-term sustainability. And so again, we revised Chapter 5 of the GSP to make sure all that additional information was conveyed and was documented well, and that is all going to be included in the GSP. Next slide, please. Awesome. So then now getting into some of the details of some of the revised projects and management actions. So as I said a little while ago, that is that our GSAs are absolutely committed to prioritizing demand management as the primary method to achieve sustainability. The meaning of that is that we are building a backstop that regardless of the implementation time period, the effectiveness, the hydrology associated with our projects, that regardless of any of those uncertainties in the near future, that we have the tools in the toolbox to guarantee our sustainability. You're beginning to kind of notice a trend or a theme with a lot of these revisions. And so in order to do that, we developed effectively 5 modeling scenarios looking at a variety of hydrologic and operational conditions, looking at different project implementation horizons and which projects are being implemented, and effectively looked at those, utilize those 5 scenarios to look at a variety of conditions to assess both our long-term sustainability as well as our ability to arrest overdraft in the near term, again, and by 2027 in the next few years here. And so effectively with those modeling runs, we were able to kind of assess the effectiveness of the projects that we have, look at aquifer conditions, and really understand what impacts we would have, both as a combination of the projects as well as that backstop management actions that we have had to basically ensure our long-term sustainability. And so really one of the focused conclusions of the PMA chapter and the implementation chapter of the GSP is, again, to really focus on that the basin has the tools available to itself to manage locally under a variety of hydrologic and operational uncertainties. And so that regardless of any conditions, we are able to handle and meet our long-term sustainability objectives.
Hey, Dominic?
Yes.
Okay, but on your last conclusion, I mean, you say should be sufficient. Is there a reason you have some clause there instead of saying will be or shall be or whatever? It should means there's some qualification there, right?
Yeah. So, and really, this is kind of focused on the kind of the bullet point right above it, is that there's a lot of uncertainties moving forward, right? But heaven forbid we end up with a major drought. In the modeling world, we can estimate, simulate a wide variety of conditions, but there is a certain degree of uncertainty. And if you actually, Liz, if you actually don't mind going to the next slide real quick, this is one of the major conclusions that we will see here. Actually, nope, sorry, I must be miscounting. But anyway, effectively though, what I'm getting at here is that we're not really just looking at model conditions. We're not relying on model inputs and outputs to achieve not only achieve sustainability, but being able to assess and adaptively manage our basin. We're not just looking at the model that overall we are being evaluated looking at observed empirical data. And so we also have the tools in the toolbox to be able to adaptively manage the basin, that regardless of whatever is thrown at us, that we've thought all that through, and that we have those tools readily and in place.
Michael, if I may, that's consistent with what we put into our demand reduction plan. We've essentially taken the position that the modeling presents the best available data and predictor of whether or not what we're proposing will work. But ultimately, we're going to rely on monitoring data and react appropriately.
Perfect. No, I think the point is the things that we can control, we know we can reach sustainability. Things beyond our control, they create bigger problems. But we have considered a range of hydrologic conditions that are, let's just say, reasonable, or things we've seen in the past, and it will work under those conditions. Maybe under extreme conditions that we haven't seen before, it would be difficult. But then everybody, I think, would be in the same boat. So that's a good thing. Okay, thanks for that, Dominic.
Thank you both. Okay, so then kind of diving into some of the details beyond the modeling is what we're presenting as far as documentation in our GSP as part of these revisions, is that we now actually are including 8 additional new projects predominantly focused on supply side implementation, as well as 2 demand reduction management actions that are really targeted towards, I guess, near term implementation, right? So again, we can hit that 2027 deadline for ourselves, and that we set for ourselves to really show that we are able to turn around our basins overdraft and and effectively begin in the recovery process. And then, as was just addressed a couple of seconds ago, we utilize a lot of this information to model these projects and management actions under a variety of hydrologic conditions to assess near-term impacts. A little bit what both Mike and Michael were pointing out was that we looked at both what we consider normalized hydrologic conditions, some of the slightly more extreme conditions, both to make sure that regardless of what is thrown at us in the next couple of years, that we have the ability and that we're able to achieve sustainability, and meet our goals there. So overall, both the 8 new projects as well as the several that we had in the original GSP, overall, we have a total yield of approximately 130 to 150,000 acre feet per year available to basin to achieve sustainability at full build out. And so once we incorporate that into all the other dynamics that are associated with operations, with groundwater flow dynamics, stream aquifer interaction, things to that effect, we see that overall, that at least our model is being able to estimate that under full build out, that these PMAs will effectively be able to achieve an actual net gain of aquifer storage somewhere in the 4,000 to 10,000 acre feet a year. So overall, we will be effectively achieving a growth in storage long term. And so really the conclusion to this is that once we incorporate all these projects and management actions that we have documented in the GSP, that we do have a feasible means to raise groundwater levels and avoid the undesirable results. That was one of the main questions that DWR identified in their corrective actions. And so we made a major point to effectively address that and really show that feasible means to achieve improved groundwater levels. Next slide, please. Okay, so then in addition to the projects, really focusing on the management action side of things that are ready for near-term implementation. One of the major programs is going to be the groundwater demand reduction plan developed by ETS GSA. That plan will be adopted here in the next few days. I believe that on the 11th, that's this Thursday, sorry. And the goal is really, again, focus on that near-term readily implementable readily implementable management actions, and that can be escalated based on the adaptive management, what we see occurring in the real world, regardless of hydrologic conditions, regardless of model uncertainty, right, is that we have the tools, the framework readily available to to be able to implement to guarantee sustainability. And so that the idea is that through this groundwater reduction plan, that once fully implemented, the GSAs are able to ensure groundwater levels decline within the next few years, and that we are able to achieve the long-term sustainability of the subbasin. Next slide, Liz. Okay, so anyone who hasn't been able to see the groundwater reduction plan, it is available on the GSA website. And this is a very detailed document going through a lot of the details associated with this major management action for the basin. And again, our real focus with this plan is to be able to arrest the chronic groundwater and groundwater storage decline. This is developed by ETS GSA, and really with the goal of hitting not only that 2027 arrest of overdraft, but really bring the GSA into long-term sustainability by 2042. This very detailed TM actually goes through a lot of details related to demand reduction, a framework associated with this effort, as well as the adaptability plans, and be able to really show that regardless of conditions, that we have the ability to ensure basin sustainability. And again, then this last item here is that looking not only at the whole basin together, but really depending on localized conditions, that we are able to have a variety of action plans that we can implement in the very near term to ensure sustainability, and that we can really target those needed impacts in areas that are most that need it most. So I think with that, I'm going to pass it back to Liz. Oh, sorry, I actually just talked about that twice. So go ahead, Liz.
Okay, sure. Thanks, Dominic. So wanted to summarize the resolution. So the GSAs drafted a resolution which will be adopted by both GSAs later this week on Thursday at the board meetings. And this is an extremely important piece of the revised GSP, because we heard over and over and over from DWR as we met with them over the last 6 months that they wanted to see timeline and commitment to management actions. And they also asked for a well mitigation program and understood that the 6-month timeframe that we had to revise the GSP wasn't sufficient to create and plan out a well mitigation program. So what they understood that it wouldn't be complete by the deadline. And so what this resolution is showing is that it's a commitment to completing it and implementing it. So the resolution has two main things. It commits the GSAs to developing and implementing the well mitigation program, which includes an initial budget in the amount of about $200,000, no later than January 31st, 2025, about 6 months from now. The resolution also commits the GSAs to implement its management actions as contained in the revised GSP, inclusive of fee structures and/or identified sources of funding, no later than January 31st, 2026. And upon implementation, these will continue into perpetuity unless otherwise directed by the GSAs. So this will be these two adopted resolutions, one from each GSA, will be included in an appendix in the revised GSP. And so also in conclusion, this is the last slide, I wanted to give you a sense of what the next steps are. Excuse me, like I've said, the GSP is going to be adopted by both GSAs in a couple days. It's due to DWR next Tuesday, the 16th. We'd like to get it uploaded and in by the end of the week if possible. And then after the revised GSP is complete, then we have 6 months to develop the well mitigation program with the initial funding. We've committed to doing that by January 31st, 2025. And then a year later, January 31st, 2026, we've committed to implementing GSP management actions. And the goal here is that by 2027, we'll achieve that inflection point in groundwater levels where we will hit the bottom and then start recovering. And in 2027, we will be preparing the 5-year GSP update for GWR. So that is all we have. Any questions?
I do, Liz. This is Juan from City of Modesto. So when can we anticipate DWR reviewing our submitted plan and saying, okay, we approve it and all the PMAs, everything that's been presented to them? I mean, because if we execute based on what's on the schedule and they don't approve of certain things, now what, right? I mean, right now we're playing the speculation game, but I guess what can we, hold DWR to? Like what, you know, will we know before the next annual reports due?
Yeah, so there's no statutory requirement for them to respond within a certain amount of time. So when we submitted the GSP, the law Sigma says that they have 2 years to review the GSP. And that's why we heard from them 2 years later. There's no requirement for them to respond within a certain period of time to this revised GSP, but they have told us multiple times that they will review it before the end of the year. And we will hear from them either right at the end of this calendar year or early 2025. So they have repeated that several times. So that's what we're expecting.
Thank you.
Hey Liz, I'm kind of wondering, as you know, these presentations go to our boards on Thursday. And as I understand it, what we're really focusing on is when water levels go below the minimum thresholds and hit those interim milestones, then things like increased mitigation kick in, right? If you try and stay above the minimum thresholds, maybe mitigation is not so much of an issue. Am I understanding that right?
No, that's exactly right. You know, DWR has said over and over to us over the last few months that, you know, they're glad that we have used the model to simulate the different projects and management actions, that it's been really helpful. And because it's the best tool that we have, right, to simulate and to predict. But what DWR is going to be looking at is the empirical data. They're going to be looking at the measured water levels. If water levels are above minimum thresholds throughout the subbasin, we're good, right? But that's currently not the case. And we, in our GSP, have defined interim milestones below the minimum threshold that we say we're going to hit by 2027. And then after 2027, those water levels will be coming back up. And like I said before, those wells where we've defined those 2027 IMs below the MTs are within the Eastern Principal Aquifer and a handful in the West as well. And so DWR will be looking at how nimble and flexible the GSAs are at responding to measured water level data to ensure that in 2027, that low point is hit, and then we're turning around the trend after that. And if they see that in 2028 and 2029, we're continuing to decline and we're not reversing the trends, they're gonna start asking, you know, why is this happening? Why aren't you able to implement management actions and projects to turn these around, as like you have said in your plan? So, you know, I know this is obvious, but it helps me to keep stepping back, and this is a plan, right? This is our plan. And so, you know, hopefully they approve this plan. We think that we have responded to what they want. We've given them what they've asked for, and we've answered their questions in this revised GSP, and hopefully it will be approved. And then we need to adhere to this plan. And if we don't, then we're going to get tough questions, and things could get more difficult in the future. So we need to implement the plan.
One other question is, so the well mitigation, when we get that done in January, do they also have to approve that, or is just something that we just implement?
I think they're leaving it to local control. I think they want to see that it's done, and I know they're happy that we're committing to it, and they're going to be happy that we're doing it. But I don't think that's something that they need to approve. They're going to leave it up to the GSAs in the subbasin.
Thank you.
Liz and Dominic, this is basically the presentation you're gonna make on Thursday to 2 boards. Am I correct?
Yes.
I was just gonna ask maybe the TAC members here, do you think this is pitched at the right level? This is the right information? Is it too technical? Is there too many acronyms? Just trying to gauge, I mean, you know your member better than I do. Just a thought on that. 'Cause I've been living and breathing this for 6 months, but a lot of our board members kind of touch this every 3 or 4 months and dip in and out occasionally with emails and other stuff, but they're not as in depth as we are. So just We'll throw that out there.
Yeah, I mean, I wear both hats. I'm in these meetings and then I also sit on the board too. And sometimes it's hard for me to separate those roles just because of that. Because I do hear it all the time, in the minutes from these meetings and what we talk about. I think it's good. My gut is that most people will take it at the word of this group. You know, that we're doing the heavy lifting here and we're putting things in order to best get our plan approved. But that said, I would be ready with some of, you know, to maybe dive a little deeper into some of the metrics that you brought up in your presentation today, should someone ask about that. I'm just thinking, you know, Vito is always good for a question or two, and so I'm trying to think of what he may ask about, because he's a pretty knowledgeable cat, and you know, typically has some questions. But I think this is a good presentation, Liz.
Thank you. Yeah, we'll definitely be prepared to answer any questions. Like Michael said, we've been living, breathing this. We didn't want to go into too much detail in this final presentation because you've seen a lot of the technical detail, but we certainly will be ready to answer any questions that come up.
There was something in the GSP, I think it was a chapter 8 or 5, section 5, where it had like a tier that showed like the reductions. And I think that would be kind of good to kind of show. Does that ring a bell from Liz?
On the demand
Yeah.
reduction.
Yeah,
Yeah, that was an ETS GSA's demand reduction plan, and we included some of those figures in chapter 8. We could certainly
well, I'm just
show.
saying that would, I mean, it just kind of puts things in perspective, right? Just, hey, this is what we're trying to achieve here with this plan. I mean,
So one thing I would add is maybe a quick definition of what IM is and what minimum threshold is and so forth, just to remind them of what we're trying to achieve, and there may be a timeline that shows that, you know, the IM, we could see water lowering to 2027, and then it's supposed to work its way back up by 2042. Just so you got maybe a visual of that. To me, that just tells a story that we do know that this is where we want to be. This is where we likely will end up. And then this is by the time we get to here, we need to make sure that we're meeting our minimum thresholds at this timeline. Just kind of give an overall picture.
and then also too, is like, what's it trigger, right? If we hit one of these IMs or something, like what happens? Like,
Well, when we drop below the IM and we don't see growth coming out of the IMs. then I
no,
think-
but I mean, as a
Yeah.
board, I mean, what's gonna happen? Are we gonna start shutting people down? Are we gonna say, hey, you can't pump so much? That's,
Yeah,
you know,
so they have to
Right.
develop the plan.
right.
Right? What is the management actions?
I mean, what's the overall implications of, I mean, it's, what are we signing ourselves up for?
The rest of the pumps go off.
Yeah, and we got plenty of them. We'll just go dig new holes somewhere else.
Yeah, well, we do have a slide. We do have a slide that we presented in the past that just kind of visually show what the MT and the IMs are and sort of what it means for the water level trends. And we can certainly add that to this presentation just to make sure that those two concepts are understood.
I know when I'm part of the Modesto GSA, so my council had to actually adopt a resolution as part of the structure there. And so I started the presentation off just going over, this is what this means, this is what this means. Because where this group has actually been involved every quarter or so, my group had not been involved almost for 2 years. So I had to start from ground zero. We may not have to go that far back, but I just think that having an overall explanation of what these different acronyms mean is important, so they all understand that. But the timeline is where I got I had to really dig into it to find out where do we have to meet the objective of sustainable groundwater? What is that deadline? That's what my council, who's a farmer, wanted to know. So I had to explain to them how we get to that point.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, so I think you know this, but overall, the goal is 2042 to reach sustainability. But By defining these inner milestones in 2027, what we've shown in the GSP is that at these wells where those are defined below the minimum thresholds, which again are the wells within ETS GSA and a handful in the West, the water levels, the IMs are below the MT. And so it's basically a recognition that water levels have been declining, and it will take the first 5 years of GSP implementation for projects and management actions to be implemented and have an effect on water levels. And then after that, after 2027, they should rebound. So this is what DWR was responding to with their request for the corrective actions associated with the first deficiency. They wanted to understand, hey, when you're lowering water levels below the MTs at these wells, what effect is this going to have on wells, on other sustainability indicators? They wanted to see that analysis. So that's an important piece of this, and it's important that these terms are understood. So we'll certainly add that to the presentation.
Michael, sitting here and just kind of thinking about this in the spirit of what Michael Clipper and Juan both, or not Michael Clipper, I'm sorry, Mike Pinkman, and Juan both said, you know, I wonder if it wouldn't be helpful to have, you know, just like a single page sheet that has some of those acronyms, some of those definitions. That way, as Liz is given, you know, because if she puts it on a slide at the beginning that just says, this is what, you know, our you know, all these mean, well, then she's gonna go into the presentation and that's quickly forgotten. So I wonder if maybe just a sheet with some of these key bullet points, things that we know are gonna be referenced in the presentation, or, you know, timeline type things, put that on a sheet and just have it in front of each board member. You know, that may be a better way to go. That way, as she is given the presentation, or whoever's up there giving the presentation, you know, a board member that's sitting up there can just reference that really quickly.
I know how you studied for tests at Cal Poly. That's a great idea. And I think the GSP has a list of acronyms in the front. If I remember correctly, we could maybe, Cynthia and I could work together, condense that, because we're not gonna need everything, and just have that on the dais.
Yeah, and I would stick to just the stuff that's gonna be referenced in the presentation. I wouldn't do any more than that.
Right.
Just give them the bare minimum of what's needed to be able to follow along.
Especially like PMAs, right? There's that list of all this stuff. It's like, they're like, well, what is PMA? It's like, okay, what can we expect the first year, second year? Without getting into the weeds of it, right? So once this goes into motion, what is it that we're gonna see? What's gonna happen? First year, second year, third year, first 5 years or so.
It's just, yeah, for me, I mean, you know, Todd Brown, Walter Wood and Curran, East Turlock GSA worked incredibly hard to get us to this point, right? So I'm looking to have a good hearing on Thursday,
Yeah.
where things go well, people understand it, recognize the work that's been done, and move forward. So sometimes it's the littlest things that trip you up, right? And so I'm just trying to brainstorm with you guys what some of those things could be.
And like you said, this group's been hearing this for months and months, right? And you have people that all of a sudden they're gonna get like, what?
I think most of us just want it over, right?
No, I hear you.
But reality is we gotta do our best work Thursday night. Me Thursday night for Sarah's.
Just have a bunch of snacks, get them all drowsy and tired and approved.
I'm trying to think if I get the air conditioning to go.
There you go. Oh, that'll, hot yoga session.
Michael, something we talk about at our board a lot is that we're at a stage of doing a little bit of doing what we're told by DWR at this moment, so that we can ensure that we can then enact our plan.
Right.
Because we're kind of at a point where we don't have as much say in this.
Right.
And we want to cross this finish line so we don't end up on the State Water Resources Control Board side.
And I made a kind of briefing to the TID board, I think it was last week, and that was kind of where we were. It's like, we need, you know, DWR's put some hurdles that we have to jump over. We're gonna do it. And then after that, we can run our own race. But right now, we're kind of beholden to them. And so
At least we're not the Delta Mendota Subbasin.
You need more GSAs.
That's 23 GSAs.
So, the pumping reduction plan, that will be available sub-basin wide if there's hot spots, that need to be mitigated as needed as like a backstop.
So they do that, right? And then, like, so TID itself is a significant pumper of groundwater, and so we can actually adjust our own pumping. We rent wells, we do things, right? So we could just elect to, and we do that anyway, and it's something we're planning to talk about when we do the MOU, but we actually have an area now that we try not to pump from, that we know it's vulnerable wells. We've got complaints in the past during drought, so we don't even pump in those areas. And we've seen an improvement in those areas during droughts of wells not going dry. And so, the best way to avoid an impact is just not pump in the first place, right? So there's things we're doing already that I think sometimes on the modeling, it doesn't pick up on that because it's, so anyway, but yeah, it's a good point.
Okay.
And to go from there, I think it's stuff we can do right away pretty readily. But again, as Dominic mentioned, you get, Australia had a 10-year drought. I don't know what, we're just gonna be in survival mode, I think, but so is the whole state, so. Anyway, okay. Any other question? Thanks for the input, everybody. I do really appreciate that. Okay, Liz, thank you, and Dominic, thank you so much for the presentation. I'll probably send you a separate email with a few thoughts, kind of go from there, if that's okay.
Sounds good.
Perfect,
Thanks,
thank you.
Mike.
Thank you. All right, if it's okay, I'll move on to item number 7, Sigma related updates. It's an opportunity for anybody on the TAC to update us on anything related to groundwater, water resources. What's going on? I appreciate the update from Mike Pitcock. What's going on in the Modesto Basin there?
Yeah, Modesto, based on all the various councils have been tasked with approving the amendment. And so we're meeting tomorrow to adopt the amendment and get it before DWR as soon as possible. Very simple. I mean, it's almost identical as far as the ask. So
Because I think Modesto doesn't have a JPA, right? So it's just each individual agency has to adopt the work separately. So, yeah. I did actually hit up Eric at OID for his resolution. And
Yeah.
that was my starting point. So
that's where my starting point was.
good deal. Curtis is drilling a well, right?
Yeah, drilling a well. We've had some excited people along the way, so we've dealt with them. It's always the fun side of it. We're just waiting to basically finish out the pilot hole, and then we'll have everything below grade ready to go, and then obviously go through the process to finish up the topside work. Part of that drill contract was to drill 2 pilot holes. So this is the first one. The second one is going through the permitting process. We haven't explored kind of the southwest corner of town in Hillmar, and so that's where we're going to drill the second pilot hole, just to see what kind of water quality we get over on that side of town. We've known historically everything from the northeast has been pretty good, and everything anywhere else hasn't been great for us. So I'm not expecting some great results, but we'll drill a hole and see if maybe we've been wrong all these years. So
you have Corcoran clay there, right? So this is going below the Corcoran clay.
Yeah.
Do you have any sense of how deep the best strata are?
Well, so we've drilled, this pilot hole was the 4th test hole that we've drilled. Each of those, the depth that we go down to has been, between 7 and 1,000 feet total depth that we drill to. Where we found quality, we haven't found any quality really below the blue layer at about that 400 or 500 feet range. Everything that we've gotten that's been of any sort of quality has been, probably, I'd say 250 to maybe 450, and then we settle somewhere in there. But a lot of those test holes we didn't bring into production because they had 1 or more water quality issues. I think one of them was 123 TCP, one of them was arsenic, one of them was nitrate. And so it's just enough to kind of steer us away from any of those previous locations. The one that we are going to go into a production well with There was a strata down there, probably, 150 feet in total depth that seemed like really good water quality. So that's what we're gonna try and capitalize on this well and go from there.
Were you able, the woman who complained, able to show her that she's using a different strata and all that stuff, or was that not working?
I would say that I put on my very nice guy conversation hat and let her do a lot of the talking. And at the end of the conversation, I was told, well, I'm gonna drill the well on my property and I'm gonna sell the water to Nestle. And I said, I wish you very well in your endeavor. Okay. And then she proceeded to hang up on me. So I don't know that she cared for my answers, but we had a very nice conversation.
We're gonna put you on the spot. We appreciate it.
Yeah, no worries.
So I'll give you one quick update in Waterford. As we extended our transmission line underneath two MIB canals and actually under the surface water for the city of Modesto. So we're actually within a few feet of the surface water pipeline now. So I'll let Will know, I'll be giving him a call next week, start conversations about getting an agreement.
Yeah, we've
with
been-
Modesto.
Yeah, we've been kind of telling him what's been going on. So he goes, yeah. I mean,
Yeah, we need to get it, we gotta
He's
get it in
been-
paper and get it in writing and get this thing done so that we can then build a pump station and start utilizing the water. The hard part's done. We got the water line across the canal, so, and that's in both Modesto and the Turlock GSA or GSP, so it's important to go ahead and get this thing done. So we just need to come to terms and get this thing going.
Right, and I think city council's in the loop of this stuff too, so he's been
Yep.
talking to them and stuff like that.
It's time to have those good, solid,
Yeah,
ending final conversations.
Sirius is putting some water lines in on Hatch Road.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Gonna be, gonna be extending the transmission main. It's like the phase 2 of our separate transmission main down Hatch. The goal is, I think, to go all the way to almost to the freeway. But this next section is gonna be to Moffett from,
That's Moffett, all right.
it's gonna go past Moffett, but this
Oh.
section that we're doing right now in the next few weeks is gonna be Mitchell to Moffett. And then there's gonna be Moffett going all the way
You
to,
guys already have your master plan done, or is the West Hill still?
no, we're still in the process. Yeah, but this next phase, I think it goes all the way to Richland or to Herndon, one of those two streets over there by the freeway. But the next phase we have going on currently that they're potholing for right now is Mitchell to Moffett.
We're getting our water, I'd like it.
So it'll help distribute the service water.
Yeah, it's just gonna, yeah. Even out the distribution and provide extra transmission main.
City of Modesto, so we have some wells that have been in litigation for PCE, and I think, well, we know, I don't know all the full details because legal's involved, so the city's gonna be getting money for mitigating, cleaning the PCE, but the thing is that, you can't use the money to put a new pump or whatever. They expect you to what's there to,
The wellhead treatment.
right? So I think there's two wells that we're gonna start looking at, but the details and how the money can be spent hasn't been released on that. And then the other thing is, one of my projects is West Yos's first phase was to do a look at the top 20 wells in our system, say, okay, what's the consequence of what's the likelihood of failure and what's the consequence, right? Say, okay, these are the ones that need to be replaced. Let's try to rehab these and so forth. So right now we're in the second phase and we're doing a well siting study to say, okay, where can we put these wells? And each well site, we're assuming that we're gonna have to put GAC or some sort of ion exchange or something. Because, as our wells go down, I mean, you just can't, you gotta replace them. And even though we have surface water, I mean, you just can't get rid of all your wells. So, so that's in motion for us. And, yeah, I mean, I guess for the next 5 years, I mean, we're looking to, construct some new wells. We got new ones coming on, Grayson and stuff like that. So a lot of stuff, SCADA projects going. Hopefully we hear something on the grant money. I poked the Bureau of
Project or your SCADA project?
That's the SCADA, that's a citywide project, so that's for wastewater, water and the whole thing, so, yeah. We got a lot of stuff going on.
Anybody else have anything?
Just from ETS GSA, we're continuing to move forward on, we finalized our groundwater demand reduction plan and we've issued a copy of that. So if anybody wants it, I think it should be up on the website soon. And today's meeting, we're making progress on our portal. We've had our, so this is our groundwater accounting platform. We had a live rollout of our beta version on the 25th. And we've gotten about a 20% sign up thus far, which is not bad for a beta version. And then we're starting work on our Prop 218 fee and on our assessment of, you know, what all this is going to cost and how we're going to fund it. So I think we're making good progress. On the one hand, I had hoped that things would slow down after we get our updated GSP in place. On the other hand, I kind of feel like things are just going faster and faster. So I'm kind of resigned to that.
Do you guys understand what their accounting platform is they're proposing?
So this is an internet based accounting tool that allows growers. Each grower has a water account. In their water account, based on their parcel size, they get a water allocation, and then their groundwater use is tracked against that allocation on a monthly basis. And that'll ultimately be utilized as a tool to help communicate with the growers as to how they're using their water, to track how they're using the water and whether they're meeting their reduction targets, to allow them to make business decisions and to send them a bill.
That through a company, Mike?
Yeah, so ESA is our consultant pulling that together, and they are also working on it. It's an open source platform, and it's been in place in a couple of different places for a while, and they're continuing to develop it. And Merced County is also using the same platform.
And Mike, if I'm not wrong, you can do things like trade, right? So if I have two 100-acre parcels, I can move water from one to another and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't developed rules for doing that kind of thing yet, but you know, we're definitely considering it to give them some operational flexibility and kind of help market forces and business decisions help you know, implement the reductions. But there is a trading module that you can add. You can add modeling to it. We're kind of not inclined to do that part, but we do want to be able to track what's happening both at individual parcels and then in the GSA as a whole. And also as part of our multi-benefit land repurposing program, we are implementing some updates to the groundwater resource, groundwater recharge assessment tool, where we are wanting to put in additional layers that will help us to identify and prioritize where we can implement, you know, land use changes and land repurposing, you know, what areas are suitable for that. And ultimately, where we'd like to be in the relatively near future is to have all that like on an interactive map so that we can have a, you know, a workshop where we have tables for different repurposing strategies, and you know, growers can come in and sit with different people to try to decide what it is they want to implement at their farms. So
if I'm a customer or grower, I can see what other growers have as far as water allocation or,
no,
okay.
you can only see
So that'll
here. So you're given a PIN and a water account for each parcel, and then first thing that you can do is you can claim your accounts and you can pool them into one account. And because this is a platform that's also being used in other basins, for example, if somebody owns a property in Merced Subbasin and here, they can see all their properties and all the, you know, all the water use data for their properties.
Sounds good.
Yeah, it would be exciting to see it work. I mean, what could possibly go wrong? It's fun.
I can't log in.
We've had a few of those.
Right, any other updates? Okay, well, our next joint meeting is August 13th, but I guarantee you it will be cooler than today.
We're gonna, that'll be in the meeting minutes.
Guarantee it. Hopefully by then we have, GSA has approved it and it's been uploaded, the revised GSP, and I'll see most of you hopefully this Thursday. So, Sarah, we can follow your meeting online. Is it on?
Yes, it's available on Zoom and it'll start at 9 a.m. on Thursday.
And ours is at 6 in the evening here at TID. So we're still making sure we have a quorum. So just double check with your representative to make sure they're going to be here. Okay, so that's good. Okay, so with that, I will ask the West Turlock for a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion.
Second, Richard, and a second by Curtis. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Adjourn 3:06.
And East Turlock, can I get a motion to adjourn?
No.
Scott, second.
Second.
Dennis, all those in favor? Motion carries. We are adjourned at 3:06 also.
Everybody.